We're now ready to take a look at the specific hands-on portion of CPR. And this actually, as I said before, is pretty simple, but it's also done under extremely difficult circumstances. That being high emotions, a fair amount of panic and fear. By the way, those are normal reactions, and I want you to realize that having those reactions is a normal thing. But it's not going to keep us from functioning. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation really means a temporary provision of oxygen in the blood to the heart, done by us as the rescuer, into the brain of the victim. So in this case, we've got a small victim whose oxygen requirements are great. CPR is for those who have no capacity to move oxygen within their body by themselves. So we are doing this for them. Oxygenated blood sits in the body, and in particular sits in the heart. When we squeeze the chest or push down on the chest, we are in fact, in a rather blunt manner, moving blood and oxygen by squishing the heart. And every time we do, we in fact move that oxygen out of the chambers of the heart, through the arteries in the neck, and up into the brain. For babies of this size, normally their heartbeats are very fast, very quick, and that's normal for them. If they are not getting adequate amounts of oxygen through a very rapid and effective heartbeat, they will start to fade. Now, I'd like to present this in a slightly different context also. I think if you look at this from 3 different levels, you'll understand who really needs CPR. The first level is those who are awake, alert, and oriented and don't need any of this help. The next level is for someone who is unconscious but doesn't need CPR. Loss of consciousness or being unconscious does not require, in most cases, the need for CPR. And the reason is that these victims, regardless of the cause of their unconsciousness, are still breathing. And if a victim is breathing, they're generally generating enough of a pulse inside that we don't have to pump on their chests and do this artificially. How do we determine that? Well, in the old days, we used to check the pulse on the victim. But outside the hospital, we're not asking the public to do any kind of pulse check. That is gone. What we're looking for is any spontaneous breathing or any moving on the part of the victim. If the victim is breathing or they're moving, they have an adequate enough pulse that we don't recommend pushing on their chest. But now we're faced with the possibility of the lowest level here, and that is lifelessness. And most people generally don't have trouble determining who is lifeless and who isn't. It usually is pretty obvious. If someone is lifeless, they need CPR. And we do not have the luxury of always even knowing why someone is in need. If they're lifeless, they require this done for them. So we're going to assume for the moment that we come upon someone who is in fact lifeless. Now, the first thing we would do is give them a little shake and ask them if they're okay. Are you okay? Are you okay? If there's no response and the victim appears discolored, limp, eyes rolled back, for example, completely flaccid, with no evidence of breathing, it is time to start. What I prefer to do, and what the Heart Association recommends, is that we stabilize the head and neck in a relatively neutral position. Place one finger at the intersection, and I will show you here, at the intersection of the breastbone and the nipple line, right in the middle of the chest. That's the location for chest compressions. So I'll put one finger at the nipple line, one just below, and I'm going to pump. I'm going to pump 30 times, and then I'm going to deliver 2 what we call rescue breaths. But we always start with chest compressions. This is a change from the old system where we used to do breathing first. For babies and kids, in fact for all victims now, chest compression comes first. So I'm positioned here, I'm going to pump as I said, approximately 100 times per minute at a depth of approximately 1/3 the depth of the victim's chest wall. And that will look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. I'll pause briefly as I come down to the baby's mouth and or nose, make a seal and blow lightly, and watch the chest rise as I blow. Come off. That second breath and start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So I would be going back and forth 30 pumps and 2 breaths and continue that. That is really the extent of what we want you to do during this phase of lifelessness. 30 pumps and 2 breaths, and continue that until either the victim starts to come around, which might, by the way, have them coming back into a place where they're not yet conscious, but they are in fact breathing. If breathing returns, stop chest compressions and observe the baby for a continuation of that breathing. Make sure that breathing is there. If they start to come back and they start to move, and certainly if they regain consciousness, this is a wonderful thing. But we're looking for any return of a sign of life for a message that we're in fact going to stop pumping and stop breathing as well, because this is now a victim who's breathing on their own and has hopefully an adequate enough pulse or beating heart that we don't have to do this artificially. But I come back to the very beginning of this with the reminder that this is a simple and rather blunt act. The heart sits just left of center underneath the breastbone, and we are in fact pushing on this bone with 2 fingers. We do it 30 times, and then we deliver those 2 rescue breaths. There is a very important addition to this incredibly scary moment, and that is the following. It's called the 2-minute rule. It is critical, and it goes like this. If you're alone with someone under the age of 8, and certainly the people we're talking about here are going to be that young, if the victim is under 8 years of age and you are alone with them, begin CPR first. In other words, we talked about those rings in the chain of survival, the first being the initiation of CPR, followed by the 911 call. If you are alone with someone young, certainly this constitutes young, we want you to start CPR first, and to do it for at least, or as much as, 2 minutes before you call 911. Clearly, if there's a response before the 2 minutes are completed, stop CPR, take the baby, run to the phone, and make your call. This is only relevant if you're alone with the victim, because if there's another rescuer, whoever they might be, you'll be starting CPR and they will be making the 911 call. And as long as we've introduced this concept to you, I should mention that if you were alone with an adult who collapsed or was found lifeless, the exact opposite is in effect. Meaning, if I was alone with an elderly person and they collapsed and appeared to be lifeless, I'm asking you, and we're asking you, to go to the phone first, because the chance of that victim requiring or needing a special tool, that being a defibrillator, is much, much higher. So that decision will really be made based on 2 factors. Number 1, are you alone? Number 2, is there someone older or are they young? Okay, so those are the factors we're looking at. But once someone is lifeless, all bets are off. If they're a baby or a child, we do 30 pumps on the chest, followed by 2 breaths. I'll demonstrate one more time from the top. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you were tending a baby and caring for them, and you found them in what appeared to be a lifeless state. And let's say you were alone. After the immediate fear and a certain amount of panic take over, you have to take a few breaths, clear your head, and remember there's only one person that's going to get oxygen to this baby's brain, and that is you as the rescuer. So I scoop the baby up, let's say, from the crib, and I probably move them to a space that was a little bit higher that I could get to, perhaps a changing table, stabilize them, get them lying flat, and take another look. If there's no response, we'd like you to start quickly by finding the location on the chest. That's where the breastbone and the nipple line come together, and start pumping. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Now I've stopped after 2 rounds of CPR, 30 pumps and 2 breaths. Just to give you an idea of how time passes during these very scary moments. If I were alone with this baby, as I suggested I might be, if I were alone and I was going to have to do as much as 2 minutes, 2 minutes of CPR is about 5 cycles of 30 pumps and 2 breaths. I only did 2 cycles, so I wanted you to get a feeling of how long that might take, in fact, for you to actually do a full 2 minutes, with a clear reminder that 2 minutes is the ceiling. It is the most you would do under these kinds of circumstances before you went to the telephone. Okay? If the baby starts to respond after 30 seconds, I would scoop them up and head off to the phone, put them down next to the phone, take the phone off, 911, hit the speaker phone, set it down, and continue going if this baby, in fact, remained lifeless. Once the voice comes in on the telephone, the 911 operator, what is your emergency? Tell them, my baby is not breathing, she looks really bad, I've started CPR, get over here now. In fact, you can continue doing that, and if you lose track of how many pumps or breaths you've given, don't worry about it. Those kinds of things make little difference. What tends to be the more damaging things is if you do nothing. If you leave this baby alone when they need this vital oxygen, nothing is getting to the brain. This is a very blunt and mechanical act where we pump on the chest, and by doing so, pushing and releasing, allowing the chest to recoil fully before you push again, then you are in fact squeezing the heart that has oxygenated blood in it right through those chambers, up into the neck. Those arteries go directly to the brain, and in there lies not only the breathing center, but also the center for consciousness. So you are, in fact, by initiating CPR, refueling those areas that are without. That's going to be up to us. No one can do that. We know that in certain parts of the country, certainly in Southern California where we are, that the average response time is about 7 minutes. Now, 7 minutes for someone who is lifeless and left alone is a devastatingly long time in terms of what happens to the brain without oxygen. So we are, in fact, bridging that gap between the moment of discovery and the arrival of help. That has got to be bridged by us. No one else is going to do that. We have to do it.